Okay, let's start the meeting of our offsets committee today, and we'll have introduction to the sec, but I just wanted to get approval of the agenda by everyone. I'd send out a quick agenda, which was to approve this, discuss with the eweb, and then review of our progress essentially on what we've been up to for the last month. Is everyone okay with that?
Okay.
Okay, good. So let's have some introductions since we have some visitors. We've been hearing from Lacey, who's helping us along today. And then we have, I'm Art Farley, heading up the committee that's looking into carbon offsets for the city. And I'll just pass it along to Jan.
I'm Jan Bowman, a relatively new commissioner.
And Mitra.
Hi, I'm Mitra Gruwell. I'm also a relatively new commissioner and upcycle fashion designer.
Karen.
My name is Karen Kaplan, and this is my second year on the commission, and I also am doing some work on zero waste.
Right. Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Allen. This is my third year on the commission.
Janine.
Hey, it's Janine Parisi. I work for eweb. It's great to see some familiar faces. I haven't seen you in a long time, Jan. It's wonderful to see you today.
Good to see you.
And Art and I email back and forth on different topics every once in a while. And I kind of said, hey, maybe we can just drop into this meeting for 15, 20 minutes and give you a sneak preview of some work that Anna's been doing. So I dragged Anna along, and here we are to talk to you about some new programs that we were rolling out. So I'll talk to Anna.
Sounds great. So we'll leave it to Anna can start off, and then whichever way you're doing it, you two can take over for a while. That would be fine. And then we'll have questions.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with a brief introduction. My name is Anna Wade. I've worked at the utility for going on 16 years now. I spent a good majority of my time kind of working upstream, supporting our power trading operation, doing risk management there. So I have some power market expertise, as well as power supply through power purchase agreements and things like that. A couple of years ago, I moved to the customer facing side of the house, where I took on my current role, which is business line manager. So my job at the utility presently is to identify customer facing opportunities, develop products and services for our customers to participate in, handle the implementation, the monitoring, the marketing, all of that kind of stuff, and long-term monitoring of those programs. Initially, my first project was to reinvent our limited income offerings. So I manage our bill assistance programs, some conservation stuff. More recently, as Janine indicated, I've been very focused on enhancing our green options for our customers. Some of you are likely familiar with eweb's Green Power program. I'll touch on that a little bit during the slide deck. So that's kind of me and my history. Thanks for inviting us. Anytime I get an opportunity to share with some of our upcoming offerings with the community, I am delighted to do so. It's good for me, gives me the feedback I need to do a better job, and hopefully creating awareness will help others make decisions about what those program offerings can mean to them and their agencies. So first and foremost, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. Real quickly, just so I can orient myself with the audience. Several of you mentioned that you're new to the commission, so I'm assuming that you're referencing the Carbon Offsets Committee. Is that accurate? No?
No, some of us just started our terms. Well, I don't remember exactly when it was, but it's less than a year, and we're so that was all. I just in terms of our tenure on the committee.
On the committee.
The commission rather than the committee.
Okay. All right, thanks for that, appreciate it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share a slide deck with you all. Let me see here. Okay, so let's see here. Start from the beginning. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Sure.
All right,
Yeah.
great. Let me start with just a little bit of background about eweb's intentions, purpose, kind of our history on this front, and where we're looking to go with these new green options. As I mentioned briefly, we haven't had a lot of options for customers to, or we haven't taken as much of a focus on carbon emissions in the past as we do now. Of course, eweb has its own carbon emissions goals, and we're very interested in any way that we can help the community, City of Eugene with the CAP 2.0 effort and all of that. So I was asked by our executive team, General Manager Frank Lawson, as well as our board, to start developing some customer-facing programs. The primary goal, as I said, is to expand customer options for them to be able to address carbon. This is a presentation that I put together for our board meeting in February. So any of you who pay attention to eweb board meetings, this may be information you've seen before. And I also shared this with the Eugene Climate Commission that was put together and headed by City of Eugene. So perhaps some of your colleagues have also seen this, but I'll go ahead and share that with you today. Environmental stewardship is really nothing new for the utility. As you all know, we have a very low carbon portfolio. 90% of our energy supply comes from zero or low carbon sources. We're fortunate in that way. We live in the Pacific Northwest, and so hydro provides us with resources that a lot of other communities don't have. eweb was also on the forefront of developing wholesale rec markets. And I don't know what the level of knowledge base here, but for those that don't know, RECs are renewable energy certificates. So it's the representation of ownership for the renewable attributes associated with a megawatt hour of electricity that was generated from a renewable resource. We also have robust conservation programs for both residential as well as general service customers, because the less power that we can use, the less carbon intensive home energy use is. And you've also probably heard a lot about the efforts that we've undertaken up in the watershed following the Holiday Farm fire. So these are just some of the ways that eweb has conducted itself in the past to be where we are today, which is a good jumping off point, but still a long way to go. So I simply share these comments because this is not really a pivot for eweb, but rather a more deliberate approach and initiative to focus our efforts more specifically on carbon emissions. So with that, okay, so this is kind of our new framework for carbon emissions and the customer facing programs that are going to help deliver those to our constituents. So it's a framework made up of both new and existing programs. As I mentioned, our conservation programs for residential, those are housed under our Live Green product line, as well as for our general service customers under the Work Green product line. Some new things that you're going to be seeing from the utility, we are putting our clean fuel credits to use by rolling out some pretty robust programs under the Move Green product line. So this is all to do with electric mobility. My colleague Juan Serpa Munoz, he heads up those programs, and there's going to be a lot of exciting things coming out of that, including incentives for electric bikes, DC charging infrastructure, rideshare that will be located and focused on affordable housing, so that we can also, as we're rolling out these programs, address social equity issues along the way. The things that I want to talk to you all most about today are the Live Green product line, which does include green power as it exists today. So again, we'll go into that a little bit more in upcoming slides. With regard to our goals and key concepts in coming up with this framework, expanded customer choice is our top priority. We know that customers are becoming more and more interested in not just, flicking the lights on and that always being the case. Reliability will continue to be a top priority for the utility, but customers are increasingly interested in the quality of that power, namely, how green it is, how renewable it is, et cetera. We're looking to promote innovation and customer awareness of carbon solutions. So there's a lot of ways that we can address carbon, and we want to offer a variety of options so customers can determine, what's the best fit for them to address their carbon footprint. We're also thinking a lot about transition. Decarbonizing the grid is not something that is going to happen overnight. We are compelled to address carbon, but we're also compelled to ensure affordability, particularly among our most vulnerable customers. So that will always be part of the calculus with eweb in the decisions we make about our power portfolio, et cetera. And then also we're very focused as a utility to move from kind of a passive customer base where we provide water and power, customer pays their bills and so on, to a model that we're looking to engage with our customers, and we want them to be willing and able to participate in eweb's power supply and demand response. I mentioned portfolio very briefly, but eweb has a lot of big decisions relating to our resource portfolio in 2028. That is when our BPA contracts renew. BPA accounts for about 75% of the power that we serve to our communities, so that's a very big deal. We also have some power purchase agreements that will be rolling off the books. So we've got a lot of very big, very expensive decisions to make. And we have a commitment to make sure that we end up better off than we are today with regard to carbon and with regard to reliability and with regard to alignment between our power supply and consumption as our customers use our products. Future of utility pricing, just a couple more points I want to make before I get into specific programs. We're also looking to a near future in which we have options such as time of use pricing or demand response. We're also looking very heavily at electrification and what that's going to mean in terms of the burden that it places on our load. So the further out we can get in front of our customers to create options so that they can manage their time of use on a voluntary basis is going to be really helpful for them in the future when there's a price signal to encourage that as well. Because as I said, we're in resource acquisition mode, and if we can start to align consumption with those future portfolio components, then we're all going to win in this community. Last thing before I move on, please note that these are first generation product offerings. So, enhancements will be forthcoming, as will broader eligibility and program capacity. And then lastly, the Lead Green product line is entirely voluntary. So customers are free to start and stop participation at any time. Any contributions they make to these programs will go to the explicitly stated objectives and investments that are presented to them. I want to touch on green power really quickly because this is one that is familiar to most of our community members. Prices and the actual product will be largely unchanged as we move ahead because our existing participants are largely satisfied. When we poll them, they indicate that they are supportive of the ways in which we are spending those elective revenues. And so we want to maintain value as our customers see it. But we have seen declining revenues for green power. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, which I'll get to. So we are encouraged by the idea that creating broader choice will, create options for customers that don't see a value center with green power as it exists today. So with the new overall framework, one of the things that I want to address is what people are actually, what the money is actually going for with green power, because a lot of it focuses on, oh, you're consuming renewable energy, but green power is a lot more than that. Yes, we do retire RECs, but green power is the sole source of funding for eweb's PV program. So we do offer incentives for customers who install solar, and green power funds are the revenue stream to support that. We also do the green power grant every other year. So those projects tend to be nonprofit and local agencies that put together project proposals to help reduce carbon, reduce our energy. So a lot of times those will be PV arrays. But we've also awarded funds to Friends of Trees and other types of like carbon emission reducing projects. So I would say of Green Power, it's sort of a product line that allows customers to socialize the investments in renewable energy, which is a really cool thing about that. Not everyone can put solar panels on their home. Not everyone lives in a location where that's even practical, but they can still participate in local solar investment through Green Power. So I intend to really focus the identity on those types of community-based and local projects. I think that about covers Green Power. So let's talk about the new ones. So Clean Power is also a product that relates to renewable energy certificates. General service demand for addressing utility-based emissions without the cost of those community investments is something that I've heard a lot from our general service customers. Basically, they want to be able to know that their operations are renewable, that they are consuming renewable energy to supply their operations. But the Green Power price tag is sometimes cost prohibitive for those organizations, for those larger energy consumers. So a primary focus with this product line is affordability. If you look at the price, Green Power comes in at 1 penny per kWh, whereas Clean Power will be just less than half, 0.00475. The reason being is that this is solely focused on that value center that our larger general service customers have expressed. They see the RECs as being the piece of Green Power that they really want to invest in. And this will enable them to do so in a way that is, as I said, more practical from a cost perspective. Because it is a bulk purchase program, there is a minimum buy-in of 5,000 kWh per month. So if a customer, I should pause, even though we are focused on our larger general service customers, any of eweb's customers can participate in Clean Power, but they simply have to accept that minimum buy-in. So if a customer consumes less than 5,000 kWh a month, they can still participate, but they would have to do so at that minimum block price. Let's see, so the RECs that we retire under this program are verified and validated by Regis with 0 emissions factor per DEQ methodology. We'll provide them with marketing packages, promotional packages so that they can express publicly their commitment to renewable energy, and annual statements for documentation and record keeping purchases. So one other thing I want to stress on this is that because it is tied so closely to wholesale markets, these prices will be calibrated annually. That's an important piece because market volatility in renewable products has been very, very high the last couple of years. So for example, in 2021, RECs were priced at around $1.50 in January. By November of 2021, they were selling for around $4.50. So that's a tremendous swing in that. So largely driven by high demand in wholesale markets. As you may or may not be aware, there's a lot of corporates throughout the nation that are very much focused on ESG, and they have investors that are eager to transition to a more sustainable business model. So we're seeing demand for RECs coming from not atypical sources.
Anna, does the city participate in this at all at this point? Are they buying any of this power?
So it's a great question. And maybe I should have led with timeline, but it's on my last slide. But since you're asking, all of the new programs will be rolling out and go live in April. We're focused on Earth Day for our product launch. So currently Clean Power is not yet available. I just got authority from the board at the March meeting on all of the pricing that I'm sharing with you today. So these prices have in fact been approved, but just so a couple of weeks ago or last week, I guess. So we'll see. Hopefully they will participate. Any other questions while we're kind of taking a pause?
This is Karen, and I'm wondering, is this part of the inventory for the city when they're figuring out carbon reduction?
So,
To the city?
So I can talk a little bit about what I know the city is doing. I know that the city participates in to a small degree in green power, but not across the board. I also know that the city has purchased carbon offsets recently. So I know they have an interest in renewable commodities products. As I said, since this has not yet been available, I suspect they'll be taking a second look on how these new products can help them achieve their goals. Because again, this will be a much more cost-effective way for them to do so.
But we still have existing products. The green power program's been going on for a long time. So
That's correct.
is that part of their inventory as well? Like, do you report that to the city? And do you give, is eweb part of the city inventory on climate greenhouse gases?
So,
Anna, maybe I can jump in here.
yeah, please do, Janine.
So I would say that eweb is tracking its own operational carbon footprint from our operations, but the city's purchase of electricity is part of the city's carbon calculations. And when we do those numbers, I have reported information on green power credits to the city in the past. So I do believe that that is being tracked by city staff. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Janine. Appreciate that. Okay, moving along. So in the clear is eweb's new carbon offset product. So the great thing about RECs is they allow a customer to consume renewable energy, but any type of carbon emissions that go above and beyond that energy consumption cannot be addressed with RECs. And we know that there is local interest to address other issues like fleet or waste or what have you. So carbon offsets are not something that eweb has, it's not a market that eweb has participated in the past, but we're eager to offer these products to our customers for those who might see, because for many of our customers, home energy use, for example, is hardly a primary source of carbon emissions for them. And that's because eweb does have such a clean portfolio at 90% carbon free. So the idea being, for those who want to get beyond and expand their efforts towards carbon emissions reductions, we'll have something else to offer them. I think also about carbon offsets is it's an effective transition strategy. I mentioned earlier that complete decarbonization of the grid, that's a long game and something that we need to be working today to achieve. But carbon offsets are something that we can do in the meanwhile. I would also add that it's not just about, reducing, carbon emissions over time, but carbon offset projects and programs have the capacity to draw down carbon from the atmosphere. So there's a lot of benefits there. And I'm going to circle back on that with the last product line. At the start, we will only be offering in the clear to residential customers. While I'm very eager to expand that to our general service customers, we just don't have the data right now to fairly assess what demand might look like from our general service customers. So I don't really know how a dental office, for example, would estimate their carbon footprint relative to a Yogi Tea or the University of Oregon or what have you. And the second thing I would add is that because eweb is new to carbon offsets, we don't have the same stability of supply line at this point. So we are working with the Climate Trust. We've already purchased one block of carbon offsets, but we need to do a little more work there to make sure that we have consistent and reliable market access so that we can always meet whatever demand that comes from our customer base. So eventually we do intend to offer carbon offsets to general service customers, but we will start residential only. In terms of the pricing, so when I was looking to right size the pricing blocks for our customers, I incorporated a couple of different things. One was, home energy use, and then transportation, as well as waste. So for home energy use, of course, we just looked at, average customer consumption with a factor of the DEQ published carbon intensity of eweb's portfolio, which is 0.02. For transportation, I utilize the data that is incorporated into eweb's electrification study. So, average family will drive 12,000 miles in a car that gets about 35 miles to the gallon. And then with regard to waste, I leveraged the analysis that was incorporated into the City of Eugene CAP 2.0 study, all assuming an average household size of 2.3 per local census data. With that, I came up with an annual average of approximately 5 metric tons CO2 equivalent per year. Now, that may sound pretty low, but again, that's not an all-inclusive measure. These are just local emissions factors. So if you bought a new washer and dryer, that 5 metric tons doesn't account for the emissions related to the production of that washer and dryer or the delivery. These are just locally produced emissions. So anything that you put in the landfill, wastewater treatment, those types of things, your transportation, and then your home energy use. eweb will allow for customers to right size their own blocks with an initial cap of 16 metric tons per year. The pricing is listed on the slide, so I don't need to really cover that for you. But the idea again here is to help customers get beyond simply their home energy use. We'll also offer some infographics that help frame up what I just described in terms of here's, average carbon emissions per customer, as well as provide links to where they can take a more personalized look at what their carbon footprint overall might be. So that is carbon offsets. And then the last product I want to touch on is the Carbon Forest Lab. So this is a really cool project that I'm excited to sort of highlight for our community. So as you all know, eweb has recently adopted a watershed recovery fee of approximately $3 per month for our customer base. The revenues from that fee are intended to help support all of our restoration efforts upriver that are fairly well documented. Janine can kind of speak to some of these a little bit better than I can, but there's a lot of good work going on outside the scope of that watershed recovery fee, namely the High Banks project that we are doing in partnership with the University of Oregon. Just a quick overview of that project. A couple of years ago, eweb purchased 140 acres of land within the Mackenzie watershed from Weyerhaeuser. That land had been previously used for agriculture. It looks like from initial testing, there may have been some dumping on there, but in any event, we purchased that from Weyerhaeuser. Initially, we had asked them to expand on our easement because we do have a small substation on that property, but they said, hey, are you interested in buying the whole thing? And for the purposes of source protection, we said, yeah, let's take a look at that. So we purchased that property, and then in partnership with the University of Oregon, we are working with the SPA lab, which is Soil, Plant, and Atmospheric Lab. It's led by a gentleman named Lucas Silva, and he heads a team of graduate students. So they went out to this property and they did a complete inventory of all, plant materials, plant life, grasses, things like that, as well as they itemized any wildlife or fish or anything that they came across while they were evaluating the site. And then they went across the entire 140 acres and they took soil samples throughout the property so they could get a baseline assessment of how much carbon is currently in the soil. They then put together a planting strategy where they've been doing multiple plantings throughout the property using different treatments. So for example, in one area, they might be all trees. In another area, it might be a combination of trees and shrubs, and otherwise they're utilizing different species with the end goal of being to assess what are the best ways to optimize and maximize carbon sequestration, not just in the above ground plant materials, but also within the soil. Carbon sequestration in the soil is something that is not well studied, but we know that there is a tremendous amount of capacity there. And that would allow for long-term carbon sinks that would not be as subject to wildfires and the like. So it's an extremely innovative and interesting project that has the capacity to be scaled up throughout the entire region. It's a great project. We've already completed the second round of plantings. And as I said, the graduate team is going to be going into the property annually to conduct follow-up soil samples and plant testing so that we can determine and help provide that knowledge base throughout the region and figure out, like, how can we manage our lands to sequester carbon in the best possible way? So again, really cool project. It also, has the day one benefits of source protection because we're now protecting that land and we are enhancing it. But there's also the local human capital. These are, this is the next generation of thinkers and innovators with, within the realm of carbon sequestration. And to have local graduate students, boots on the ground, testing the soil, just a really cool project. As far as the price is concerned, so the goal is to hopefully get beyond the High Banks project and sort of recreate this structure through any additional land acquisition up in the Mackenzie River, land or environmental easements, that sort of thing, so that we can expand beyond and continue to develop a knowledge base, but also hopefully in the future to have projects that are of a scale that we could actually produce carbon offsets locally and sell them through our In the Clear program. The prices that you see on the screen are based on the actual cost of plant materials, the storage, the protective types of equipment, and the transportation for all of those plant materials. And then the plus version includes that, but also the costs associated with the graduate team work that they're completing on our behalf under an operating agreement, again, with the University of Oregon.
Great.
So,
I don't want to really interrupt because this has been so excellent. You've done an excellent job providing this. I think we have about 10 more minutes to spend with you. And the context for the invite was that the city does have its CRO and it is buying carbon offsets, as you noted, that to offset about 6,000 metric tons a year that they have. And we're wondering, one thing I heard that was good was this REC program, which maybe if the city got involved with that, they could at least directly reduce some of their emissions. That would be on the upfront part, but they still, so we're looking at a significant load there. I heard you said that you are going through the market with a climate trust. So that's how you're getting your offsets calculated. Is that right?
Yeah, so procurement, as I said, we've only purchased one block of carbon offsets to date. But we will leverage eweb's, trading floor and portfolio management to procure additional projects as needed, depending on what we see for demand. But yeah, I like the Climate Trust. It's a nonprofit. They're a proven agency to provide verifiable and reportable carbon offsets.
Right, and that is what the city needs. So that's kind of and that's what they did. They just went directly to a market like that rather than going through eweb. So I guess the question is there anything either of you can imagine from what you're planning and doing now that could scale up to helping the city offset a significant portion of 6,000 metric tons? Other than going to the Climate Trust, since they can do that themselves in a way.
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So I think what eweb has the potential to offer is, sort of a combination of products. So the city of Eugene will be able to more cheaply cover its actual energy consumption through the Clean Power program. And then, as I said, over time, as our In the Clear program develops, that may be an easier source for them to maintain their carbon offset needs. that's certainly not necessary. They've already purchased carbon offsets from the Climate Trust, so they may choose to do that. And that's perfectly fine. But it's really the combination of products that we're going to be offering, as well as an option on the water side. So these are entirely voluntary. If there's value there, or if there's something missing, something more that eweb could offer. Again, that's why I like to get on these calls, because it's an opportunity to hear feedback and hear what other needs that we might be able to meet for our community that we're not currently thinking of or covering. And then, of course, we'll continue to partner on conservation projects with the city of Eugene. Echo Hollow Pool was a big one. So I suspect that there'll be continuing opportunities in that regard as well.
Throw it open to the committee, other questions and comments for a while, and then we should wrap up in about 5 or 10 minutes here, 5 minutes maybe. So
Can
we
we
could,
stop screen sharing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Pause share.
kind of let it go for a while there, since I think that was very interesting. Nice to see what eweb is doing and all, but so throw it open to committee members for discussion.
So as a consumer, I'm on green power, and so I'm already paying for that. So these additional programs with the carbon offsets and stuff, we'll have a chance to opt into those and then be paying additional for that as well. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, the idea is that each of these products are autonomous, so they can you can sign up for one, but they're not mutually exclusive, and they do fit together nicely in some ways. So if you're interested in using green power to support local investments and to get the RECs for your home energy use, you can do that. You can go beyond and cover your transportation or whatever else. So yeah, they're intended to be either autonomous or cumulative.
I ask one more part of that. Okay, forget it. I forgot.
Mitra.
So for your carbon offsets that you purchased that from someone, do you know what the actual project is? That is
Yeah,
it local?
So it's based out of Alaska. It's called the Clawwalk Project. So it is a carbon forestry project, and we'll have a lot more information and details about this published to eweb.org. I chose that project in part because eweb is very interested in carbon forestry, and I thought it would be a nice way to introduce the concept to our community, because it's something that we're trying to establish locally as well. The other thing that I like about the project is it has, auxiliary benefits, huge benefits to, water quality, habitat, and it also is it also helps provide revenues to the local indigenous community there.
I think one of the things that we're focusing on is trying to invest money spent on carbon offsets, if that's the route the city takes, on more local projects. So is there potential in your carbon forest lab, which is the Mackenzie River watershed restoration, is that something that could be potentially verified as a carbon offset, like verified, or that could, people could invest in like a carbon offset?
Yeah, so in the long term, that is absolutely our goal. As you were probably all aware, these are big projects, and it takes a good amount of time and money to get the baseline inventory and all of that worked up. So it's not going to be a near-term solution for the city of Eugene, but we're certainly interested in investing in the long term of locally generated carbon offsets. We've heard from some of the customer feedback I received was just that, I don't care where the project is located. This is a global issue. So long as I feel confident that it's making a difference, that's what's important to me. Other community members have made very clear that local is extremely important to them. Unfortunately, well, no, not unfortunately. The good news is there's increasing demand for carbon offsets as well, for the same reasons that I mentioned with regard to RECs. So these are in high demand. Voluntary markets are kind of exploding because corporates, municipalities, we're looking at these to help solve, we're looking at these types of projects to help solve our climate goals. And so it's creating a lot of demand, and it's making it hard to stay local in terms of procuring those offsets. But it is a shared goal, Mitra.
Great. Thank you, Karen. You got that question?
I do. So I'm interested in energy credits. So like your furnace breaks and you got to put in a new furnace or something like this. When I built my house, there were, I don't even know where it came from, but I got some energy credits for different things that I did. But now, you know, I hear people saying, oh, I got to put in a new furnace or something like this. And then I try to find federal programs. I just start digging around and stuff. And then you've got this eweb program, you know, is this a new program for rebates for energy changes? The idea of electrification to, if you go and electrify your gas appliances or something like this, well, that's something that would go through this program. And I guess that my question is that how stable is that? Because it just seems like these rebates and energy credits and tax credits are constantly moving around and it's not ubiquitous, you know? Like my friend in Hood River, I couldn't find anything on there, and I couldn't find anything on the federal level, you know? That would be really helpful for consumers to know about and also to have some stability in those programs.
Yeah, so, and you bring up a good point, you know, so IOUs go through the Energy Trust in order to deliver their energy efficiency conservation programs. Fortunately, we have a locally elected board, and so we're able to fund our programs independently. For as long as I've been at the utility, those programs have been extremely robust. Like our budget is around 2.6 million a year to incentivize energy efficiency in homes and in workplaces. The second piece that you brought up is, you know, not just, okay, you're using resistance heat, move to a ductless or move to an efficient heat pump, but one of fuel switching. So there are two parts to that. First, as I mentioned, because eweb's portfolio is as green as it is, you know, switching from, say, natural gas to electricity is you know, definitely a cleaner way to go. And so we're looking at what the options will be through our electrification study, because one thing that we need to be very careful of is that we don't load during peak hours. If we do so, then we're out in the market potentially purchasing power from producers that do not have the kind of carbon intensity that we're accustomed to. So those seasonal peaks, when the markets, everybody in the region is buying a lot of power, that triggers more carbon intensive generation coming from, say, Montana, Idaho, et cetera, that isn't based on hydro generation. So we're very thoughtful about how we want to approach electrification. We know transportation electrification is a clear winner. It's a clear winner for our customers. It's a clear winner for the utility because we have the opportunity for off-peak charging. There are a variety of electrification options that have the potential to be winners. So for example, dual fuel heat pumps, for example, that can switch between. So if you're currently heating with gas exclusive, then that would be a great option. So more to come on that, but with regard to funding for conservation, that's not going anywhere as far as eweb is concerned.
Right.
Janine, would you echo that? Yeah.
Well, Laura,
but
okay.
go ahead. I was gonna say, how would the average consumer know about that? Like I want a new whatever. How do I find out about this? You know, there's eweb.
So, yeah, on eweb.org, we have a variety, we have a ton of information about our conservation programs. And that's pretty easy to find. You just, you know, go to eweb.org and navigate either residential or commercial, depending on what your needs are. So you can get information there. There's also contact information for our field services department that delivers these. And I would also encourage you to sign up to some of our communications and marketing distribution lines. We have one that is very specific to environmental and conservation. those types of things. And so we send out monthly newsletters to try to promote what eweb does have to offer. And again, this new like framework and product launch, we're going to take a very aggressive like marketing and promotion approach. So we hope for those that aren't aware that eweb offers these things to highlight that.
Well, so like if someone that's out of this area, where do you look for these kinds of things?
My commitment is to eweb customers, and that's where I put my focus. I would say have them seek out the Energy Trust or their local utility.
Okay, Laura or Jan, do you have a last minute question? So we at least have 10 minutes to discuss what we're going to do next.
I just
Mike?
wanted to thank you, Anna. That was really helpful
Yeah.
and useful, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come to our meeting.
I'm happy to, Laura. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that. Great information, good to know, and appreciate it. My questions were asked by others.
So that was an excellent presentation about what's coming. It's exciting to hear what you're planning and where we are. And so very good. Electrification for Laura. So thank you very much. And we'll just kind of move into the next phase of our meeting. You guys can hang around if you want or not. So thanks. So I think
Thanks for having us.
great.
Yeah,
thank
thanks,
you.
Art.
Very nice. And
You know where to find us.
Great.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So some of us had looked at, so that'll be interesting. Maybe why don't we all just jot down a little bit after the meeting what we thought we heard eweb say and how useful it might be. It seems to me that they're right where we are with the city. They've got a way at least to offer customers some offsets through the market, and the city of Eugene can do that on its own. So in a sense, it's not a vehicle there. The forest
Lab.
initiative is good, but that's going to be out there quite a ways, but I think they're doing the right thing there. And maybe someday there'll be the eweb offset program, which would be very nice. Yeah, Mitra.
So is the timeline out there for creating the watershed restoration in Mackenzie? Is it a ways away because watershed restoration takes a long time, or is it a ways away because of the verification process? Does anyone know?
Well, we didn't ask them, but I get a feeling that it's going to take a lot more for us to acquire. They're doing an experimental process.
I
Yeah,
talked
Laura.
to another person from eweb about the same topic who wasn't doing the program, but it was Carl, and I already reported back. But just to summarize, they will know at the end of this year.
Okay.
Because they don't know, they're analyzing the forest, they bought it, it's burned land, and so they have to figure out what's out there, and then they're also finishing up the study with the UFO on the uptake capacity in this area.
Uh-huh.
That's
That's
not
cool.
completed yet.
Right.
I'm wondering if there might be a pathway of recommending some capacity expansions with some of their residential like energy efficiency programs or something like that. I mean, that's kind of what we've already been talking about with the the list, the menu that we were talking about before, but going through an organization that's already offering this and seeing if there's a pathway to expanding or increasing incentives or expanding the footprint or the usage of these programs, or offering, I really liked, she didn't talk much about it, but this is like dual fuel thing, like figuring out what the obstacles are of people. I know there's a lot of local pushback intuitively about just, getting rid of natural gas entirely, but just kind of roping in people that are on the fringes into some of these programs by ramping up some of those things or increasing whatever they need to get that going faster.
Looked like Laura had a wave there.
Yeah, I had a report back. So I talked to Juan from eweb about this topic. That was one my to-do list because it's come up before at our meetings, and so I'm going to report back. That was the question that we had, and this is just informal because we're going to be present to the council. I'm going to write up my understanding of our conversations, then he's going to get it approved before we share it. But basically he said that eweb, of course, is really interested in partnership, and if they know the like dollars per ton of carbon, like if the city were to come to them in the future and say, we have $18 per metric ton of carbon, we want to reduce 6,000, what can we do together? Then they could strategize and find the best programs to make those reductions. And he said their commercial and industrial sectors would be the best bet, because residential, it's very uncertain. And they're also seeing, customers might switch, or they might get electric heat pump, but then they keep their gas furnace and there's no guarantee they'll actually remove it. So then they might be using both. So in the residential sector, it's just less certain what kind of reductions you're going to get. So he was thinking with this particular goal of like reducing a known quantity of carbon, that they would most likely be investigating their commercial sectors or industrial, because that's a sure thing. Like if you replace equipment, you're not going to go back. So he expressed a lot of interest in that, and it would be a future conversation, because it's not like a quick and easy thing to say like yes or no, but it would be a dialogue that they would be really interested in having. So with approval of my notes, we can include that and make that recommendation to
Right.
council.
No, that's
Thank you.
very interesting. All of these things have some lead time, but at least people are beginning to think about them and see what could be done. That's very nice.
Matt?
And Matt has a hand up there.
Yeah, thank you. I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to ask a question while we had a couple minutes. I thought this was a great presentation and good questions. We are working with Chair Matima and Vice Chair Laura to schedule some of the upcoming commission meetings, and we'll have a good company coming to talk about the decarbonization study for existing buildings. They also could, if it was desirable, talk a little bit, kind of a quick overview on the state of the offset market, just to kind of maximize their time while they're with us. And I wanted to, I don't know if it's appropriate in the commission meeting or if that's more of the subcommittee topic, but I wanted to see if there was interest in that.
I think that would be fine. I mean, our interest is the commission's interest in the sense that we're assigned by the commission to kind of look and bring some information back to them. So if part of their presentation could look on a bit of the offset market, that would be fine. It sounds like it's even that's going to begin to be a problem as the prices are going up. So yikes. it's
maybe,
everybody wants to offset, and as we've looked into it, pretend they're doing well. That's a little strong to say, but that's kind of where we are.
And maybe, Matt, we should wait on scheduling that, because our committee should finish up and then we should make our own report to the commission. So just in terms of process, it's an interesting topic, but the committee will kind of finish, and then we might, as a committee, decide, yes, we want that, but thank you for letting us know
That is totally,
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Very good. Karen, we got time for maybe just a couple more questions, and then we need to decide when we'll meet again, and maybe we can, we'll be editing a document and trying to make some progress as the month goes along, hopefully, but we've had a good information today. So Karen, did you have your hand up, or?
And maybe this is just a question I'm throwing out there, but as I've read through Laura's report and listening to their presentation, another thing that I'm curious about is, that whole Mackenzie watershed project. Are they planning to plant trees, or what are they doing? It's bare land right now. So you don't have to answer it now, but it's something that's really curious.
Mitra?
Well, I'm in the midst of the master recycling program, and we just looked into watershed restoration processes. And based on what she reported, I don't know this, like I didn't ask her, but what she was just explaining is it sounds like they've created a plan with the U of O to restore different sections of the land they purchased in different ways. And they all have different kind of levels of impact from my understanding. Like there's, removing invasive species and restoring native species. And then there's shrub, and then there's trees. The trees take like the longest time to restore, and they bring certain animal habitat, whereas the water, so, I mean, that's my understanding of it, is it's different levels. Yeah, sorry. I hope that was helpful.
Right. I don't know what to say. You know, we saw Matt. I think it's important. I sent out a report as well on my meeting, and that was very exciting in a sense to see that there are a number of environmentally oriented nonprofit groups organizing as a Southern Willamette or Upper Willamette watershed group. And I think that's the way to go. We're going to have to look at this whole area if we're going to make progress, not just Eugene or anything like that, you know, so that's all good. And then, and Matt's comment about, you know, well, it's all good, these other things you were just mentioning, Mitra, but when it comes down to the CRO, we have to have somewhat semi-verifiable, you know, carbon reduction. That's what we're looking for. It'd be nice to have all these other things, but we can't propose something that only is doing that. So we've got still some work to do, but we're getting more information all the time. Time's kind of up for us. Can we all try to do this again next month and really be more focused on our process and getting a product out of the committee at that point? But I think this was a good information gathering meeting. Does that work for people? What day is that? Again, let's look. So that would be my calendar's beeping.
You want the first day, April?
April 4th? Is that what it looks like?
You're looking for the first Monday, yeah.
Right, April 4th.
Yeah.
Is that still working at 1 o'clock for everybody? Well, we're going on here, but we're at least making kind of progress, hovering around something. I don't know what we're going to end up with, but very good. So is good with Mitra? What do you want to say, Mitra?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you, all of you, but that presentation from eweb was really great. And Laura, thank you so much for like having these targeted conversations with these guys, and Art too. I know we've all been doing lots of stuff, but that was super helpful information to have. And I think it definitely clarifies our path forward regardless. I know it feels like we didn't get a lot accomplished today, but like, I think it eliminated certain pathways so that we can focus forward. So thank you.
Start making some decisions about what we want to recommend. So that's fine. Okay, it looks like we're agreed. Jan, you're okay with next month on, okay, so very good. So April 4th at 1 o'clock, we'll meet again, and we'll meet before then at a commission, I guess. So, okay, thank you. Very good. Thanks for coming, everybody. Great.